will be quite unsettled with sunny spells and blustery showers, and some of these will be heavy and thundery in northern and western areas. Now we have low pressure anchored to the north of Scotland. That's where we'll see the heaviest of the rain, but there'll be lots of isobars on the charts for Sunday, so it will be a blustery day. Winds touching near gale force around some Irish sea coast. And there'll be quite a lot of showers around here, some heavy with hail and thunder for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern and western England and Wales. A better chance of staying drier will be across more central and eastern parts of England, where we'll see more sunshine. So perhaps up to 20 or 21 degrees here, otherwise the low to mid-teens further north. And through Sunday night, the showers continue. They fade across many central and eastern areas, but they'll continue to pile into northern and western areas. And we'll start to draw in some cooler, fresher air for the early part of Monday. So single figure values, I think, across the board. So for Bank Holiday Monday, it's a chillier start. There will be some early sunshine around. Blustery showers continue northern and western areas. And I think we'll see the clouds tending to build through the afternoon with longer spells of rain pushing in to northern and western areas. And certainly a cooler day to come, 11 to 16 or 17 degrees. The cool, showery, unsettled weather continues through the week, but there are hints that pressure may build across more southern areas. That should allow some drier, sunny and warmer weather to move in.
In a world where media is evolving faster than ever before,
where stories are shared in bite-sized portions,
influencers change minds,
and news arrives in an instant.
We hear from media insiders on their perspective on the world
and uncover the stories behind the latest trends. Join us for The Media Show. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
The art of good conversation is to say the right thing at the right time and in the right way. You have to be original, sympathetic, encouraging, and also keep an open mind. And you really do just need to sit back and listen.
Catty Kay meets with visionaries of arts and culture to find out what sparks their creativity.
Influential with me, Catty Kay. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Thelma Schoonmaker, Noah Rogers, Salman Rushdie, welcome to This Cultural Life. Some of the world's leading artistic figures reveal to me their influences.
This is what we call fiction. You start from a real source and you reimagine it.
And the experiences that have inspired their own work.
Being an editor is one of the most creative jobs you could ever have in the world.
For a fascinating insight into what fires the creative imagination, join me, John Wilson, for This Cultural Life. Watch on iPlayer.
Disinformation.
There is no climate.
You think you're winning.
The pandemic wasn't real.
Fooling people in the most sophisticated ways.
From that police. Social media places.
You fueled hate and confusion. And you make our job seem almost impossible.
Fake news.
Almost. You see, it's because of you we get up in the morning and work through the night, all over the world. The more you try to drown out reality, the harder we'll work to verify the facts. We will find your sleights of hand and expose them. So no matter how hard it gets, we'll never give up. We'll be watching. We'll be ready. It's the pursuit of truth that gives us our calling. The fight for truth is on.
This is BBC News. We'll have the headlines for you at the top of the hour, which is straight after this programme.
Welcome to Political Thinking, a conversation with, rather than a newsy interrogation of someone who shapes our political thinking about what has shaped theirs. My guest this week has a rather blunt, unusual message for the Prime Minister. There will be times, she says, when what's right for Essex is not right for Barry. Like Nessa and Smithy, there'll be a bond, but there'll also be issues. Those are the words of Eluned Morgan, who's been First Minister of Wales for less than a year, and who says our patience is running out. What Wales needs, she said in a recent speech, is the Red Welsh Way. And one reason she might be saying that is because she's also warning her party that she might be out of a job and Labour out of power in Wales within a year, with elections for the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, in 2026. The risk, my guest says, has never been greater. Trump won, Brexit won. The things they say can never happen are happening. Reform could win. Eluned Morgan, Baroness Morgan, welcome to Political Thinking.
Diolch yn fawr.
I have heard Gavin and Stacey often quoted, but never to make a political point. What was your point?
Look, I'm a massive Gavin and Stacey fan, and but my point is that actually what's right for one part of the country is not necessarily right for another part of the country. And, you know, what you saw in Gavin and Stacey is a family coming together, different parts of the country coming together, and at times there's going to be differences, and that's okay, because you're still family, you still get on, but there are times when you just see things from a different perspective.
In this big speech you gave about the Red Welsh Way, you said we're a messy family. Does it feel quite messy at the moment?
Look, I mean, I think we've always been a bit of a messy family. It's a broad church, and that's okay. Let's all relax a bit. Let's all get on with each other. But we are a broad church, and that's fine. I think it's really important, especially in an age of devolution. And I think the party is still coming to terms with that. That it's okay to do things differently. I just think everybody should relax a bit.
I bet that's not what they think in Number 10. You're here in London because you've got a big meeting of the leaders of the nations and also the regions with the Prime Minister. If someone were to slip up to you and say, Eluned, it's not very helpful you saying these things. We're going to come to some of them, being critical of the Westminster government about benefit cuts and so on. What would you say to them?
What I'd say is that we have massively gained as a result of the UK Labour government. We've had the biggest uplift in our budget since the Senedd was established 26 years ago. And that's helped us to bring down waiting lists, for example. We've hit our targets on waiting lists today. Yippee! So I'm really delighted with that.
You wouldn't say that to a Labour colleague. You're saying that to the listeners and viewers of this programme. What would you say to a colleague who says, crudely, can you just shut up? Because it's not very helpful, some of these things you're saying.
Look, what I'd say is I'm doing what it says on my Labour membership card. What does it say there? What does it say there? It says country first. That's what I'm doing. I'm putting my country first, and my country is not quite the same country that Keir perhaps had in mind when he was writing that membership card.
Ah, how's it different?
Well, in the sense that I represent Wales, that is the thing that I need to put first in terms of my country. He was thinking of a broader UK.
Yeah, but what you mean, isn't it, is that there are different values in Wales, hence this phrase, Red Welsh Way, which of course is partly a reference to the colour of the rugby shirt, the football shirt, the dragon, but it's more than that. You mean red politically as well, don't you?
Well, look, I'm comfortable with the fact that we in Wales have a long tradition of being the party that incentivised the NHS, because the background of Eluned Bevan, the community approach, the fact that, you know, we're a small nation, we can reach in, we've got a really close connection with the people we represent. And so it's okay for us to do things differently. And I do think the centre of political gravity in Wales is further to the left.
Here's what I think you might say if someone sidles up to you into Number 10 and tells you to keep quiet, to keep stum. Have you seen the opinion polls? Because what was striking about that speech you gave the other day, I quoted it in the introduction, was you saying Brexit won when people thought it wouldn't, many. Trump won when people thought he wouldn't. And you're now saying Nigel Farage's party, Reform UK, could win in Wales.
Well, it's a challenge, but we've also got a threat from Plaid Cymru. So we do have a threat from the right and the left. What I'm saying is that I'm going to be true to my values, and my values are not that I'm going to tack to the right to take on reform, but I'm going to stay exactly where I think I should be. I'm going to stick to the Red Welsh Way, which is more to the left than perhaps the centre of gravity in the UK Labour at the moment.
Yeah, let's talk in a second about what tacking left might mean for you, for Keir Starmer and others. But you've already referred to your roots in a way. You mentioned Nye Bevan, the founder of the modern NHS. And your family, you are steeped in the history of Welsh Labour. You grew up in a house where the giants of Welsh Labour, popped in for tea.
No, they did. So my dad was a vicar on the largest council estate in Europe at the time. 30,000 people living on the estate, and our house was the kind of centre of activity, not just for the community, but it became the centre of political activity as well. And so, we had, George Thomas was the Speaker of the House, because he used to be the local MP, so he used to turn up quite often. Rhodri Morgan, he went on to become, he was the local MP as well. Mark Drakeford was my youth worker. So,
but if you go back even further, some of the giants of Labour politics, Jim Callaghan.
Jim Callaghan was
former Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly, he came around as well. So there were all of these people who, they were in my front room quite often.
And as a little girl, were you sort of sent upstairs and said, well, Daddy's having a conversation now? Or were you there, listening, learning, watching?
It wasn't a kind of house where you sat upstairs. Everybody was in. You didn't know who you were going to find in your front room. We had a mental health hospital down the road. You'd turn up sometimes, there'd be 10 people from the mental health hospital sitting in the front room. There'd be rough kids from the estate sitting there as well, alongside Rhodri Morgan and Mark Drakeford. So it was a real free-for-all. It was an amazing upbringing. But more than anything else, it taught me that there are people on an estate like that who've got talents and values and something to contribute to society. And sometimes they didn't have the opportunity to do that. So that's what motivated me to get into politics.
Did it also motivate your dad to stop being only, in inverted commas, a vicar and actually to go into politics because there was more he felt he needed to do?
I think so. I think it got to a point where, praying for somebody who's having a tough time wasn't enough. He wanted to be more involved in their lives and realised that, if you wanted to help somebody with their council house, you had to get on the council to make things happen.
It was an old man's world, politics, wasn't it? And I think particularly in the Welsh Labour Party. And young Eluned Morgan goes into the European Parliament, as it happens, your first big political job. Age what?
27. I was the youngest member of the European Parliament, and it was a culture shock, not just for me, but for everyone, because the fifth woman in the history of Wales to be elected to a full-time position, that was a bit of a shock for people.
Yeah. A woman and a very young woman, and new. Was it hard to be taken seriously, to be heard, if you like?
It was brutal. I found it really, really tough. I was very inexperienced, so it was very much learning on the job.
People who talk about you often say you're 100% Welsh. We'll come to the Welshness in a second, but also 100% internationalist, in part because of that time that you spent in Strasbourg and in Brussels. Yet you now lead a country that voted for Brexit. This was an important week, the Prime Minister unveiling a new deal with the EU. On behalf of Wales, I know you welcomed the deal, but did you think, I wish we'd go further?
I'm not going to apologise for that. Absolutely. I'm pro-European. I was devastated by the Brexit result. I'm not going to hide that. I was always a Euro enthusiast. The EU poured money into our communities. But the people of Wales voted for Brexit. At some point, do I want to see us getting closer to the single market? Yes, I think it would be beneficial because we have seen a collapse in terms of exports to the EU as a result of that. I'd be comfortable with it. Yeah. Whether the public would be is a different question, but would I be comfortable? Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, that question about whether the public would be comfortable, because as you've made clear, you now face a threat not just from the National Party of Wales, that's their slogan, Plaid Cymru, on the left, but also from Reform on the right, who will say, our First Minister, Eluned Morgan, is not listening to the people of Wales. They don't want to get any closer to Europe. Is there a danger that you don't listen and that voters just think, all right, she's not going to listen, we'll get somebody else in?
Well, look, do you know the first thing I did when I became First Minister is I went on a listening tour of Wales. I just rocked up on high streets around Wales without any planning and just ask people, what do you want us to do? What's your priorities? And I came back after a month, sat out and listened to what they had to say. What do you want us to do? What are your priorities? I set out those 4 priorities. With the extra money we've had from the UK Labour government, I've poured money into those priorities. Hence, you've seen those waiting lists come down. That was their number 1 priority. There you go. Tick that box. That's happening. We're filling potholes. They were furious about potholes. We're going to fill 70,000 potholes before the next election. So I'm just kind of responding to the bread and butter issues.
When the NHS is raised in Westminster, the NHS in Wales, it is usually by Conservatives saying, you've run it, you the Labour Party, for 26 years, even when the Tories were in power in Westminster, and it is significantly worse, and people wait for much longer than they do in England. And even though you've met your targets for cutting waiting, people still wait much longer in Wales than they do in England, don't they?
Well, look, I think, first of all, you've got to look at the scale of what we're up against in Wales. We do have an older, sicker, poorer population. So what we need to do is much more. And just to give you a sense of the scale of what we're up against, the NHS in Wales, sees directly or indirectly, has contact with 2.75 million people every month in a population of 3 million people. I mean, this is staggering statistics and the staggering amount of work that is being done.
But in England, the figures are fewer than 150 patients have been waiting more than 2 years. You've just cut it. It is a big cut from 24,000 to a little bit over 8,000. Your target was 8,000, a few hundred either way. 8,000, that's still 50 times more than the whole of England, which has got a much higher population.
And we've got work to do. Let's be clear. I get that, but we've been waiting. We've had 14 years of austerity. We needed that additional money to be able to top up and bring those waiting lists down.
I want to also talk about that little phrase that tripped off your tongue, which may surprise people. Again, not living in Wales, older, sicker, poorer. Mm-hmm. And there may be people listening who go, wasn't that your fault? I mean, you've been running the country for a quarter of a century. You got the devolved parliament you wanted, the Labour Party. You, Eluned Morning, First Minister of Wales, you're in charge, and before you there were others. Why are people older, sicker than poorer if you've had it your own way politically for so long?
Well, we've got a lot of people moving into Wales who are older. It's a lovely place to live, so I don't blame them. But, that does mean that if you look at the number of people over 65, in England it's about 19%, in Wales about 21%. So, that's just a matter of fact. And when you're older, you're more likely to be sicker. So those things go together. The poorer bit, look, some of that is a legacy of the past. And one of the things that I'm determined to do as First Minister is to change the weather when it comes to the economy in Wales. So we're going to be hosting an international investment summit, first time that's ever been done in Wales in December, getting people in to recognise that actually, we're really proud of our industrial heritage of the past, but we're looking to the future as well now.
So then we come to Westminster, and to what extent Westminster is to blame for some of your problems. Now, when the Tories lost the general election, you welcomed that. You talked about there being a new partnership of power. In other words, Labour in power in Westminster and also in power in Cardiff as well. It sounds like that quote I gave at the beginning of the programme, our patience is running out. You think that partnership isn't delivering as well as it should for Wales?
It's not delivering as fast as it should. So the first thing is, look, there is some great things, and we've had that massive additional injection of cash. That is changing things. So, that is partnership in power. They've also given us money to help to remove coal tips, for example. So that's something, an industrial legacy from the past. And because of climate change, some of those tips are becoming unsafe. And this is a pre-devolution legacy. This is what powered the empire. And we kind of think, hang on, why do we have to cut our NHS services to sort those out, which is what powered the empire, pre-devolution? We need a contribution from the UK government. And
It's very
to be
interesting
fair...
you mentioned, sorry to interrupt, but that history.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
back to
on
the
this-
nostalgia now.
No, I wasn't going to say that, actually. No, I wasn't going to say that again. I was going to make a slightly different point. When the past leader of Plaid Cymru talked to me on political thinking, he made the case for reparations. He said, look, a lot of Wales's core problems, economic and social, are because England took the money, exploited Welsh resources, and we're entitled to get some of it back. We should stop having to plead for it. We should effectively have reparations. You may not like that technique, but you are effectively saying, aren't you?
No.
Come on, cough up England.
Well, I am when it comes to coal tips. Yeah, absolutely. We need a bit more support. And do you know what's great? Is we tried this with the Tories for years and years and years. They did nothing. And this UK Labour government has started to cough up. I want a bit more. I'm always going to ask for more, Nick. So let's just be clear.
What more you might want.
I'm always going to ask for more because that is my job.
Now, one of the things, well, I don't know whether it's wanting more or wanting less. You want less in the way of benefit cuts. Let's start with winter fuel payments. Rachel Reeves, in her first act as Chancellor, cut the winter fuel payment. And you were instantly critical of that. And because you've got an older population in Wales, you said it was going to hit Welsh old people more than it would elsewhere. Are you now saying you've got a victory? Has the Prime Minister listened? Or is it only just one step on the route to change?
We don't know where the threshold's going to come in yet, but I really welcome the fact that UK Labour has listened. That's really important. Listened to people on the streets, but also, I've had the chance to speak directly to the Prime Minister just to say, look, this needs to be changed, and I really, really welcome the fact that listening has led to change. So that's great. We've got to just be careful where the threshold is.
Give us an idea, because it's at the moment the only people who get winter fuel allowance are people on pensioners' credit, aren't they? And that's about 11,000 a year. It's very low. Where's it got to go? 20?
Well,
more than 20?
I'm not sure if millionaires should be getting a winter fuel allowance, right? So let's just make sure that they don't get it. But people below that, I think that's where the conversation's got to be.
Ideally, you'd say to the Chancellor ahead of a budget, well, by all means, take winter fuel allowance away from high-rate taxpayers, but leave it with everybody else.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd be. And let's see where they come in terms of threshold.
And there's another benefits issue coming down the line, isn't there? Disability benefit. Now, again, there are more disabled people as a percentage of the population in Wales than there are in England. The Chancellor is proposing with the Welfare Secretary to cut that budget too. Are you saying don't?
What I'm saying, I totally understand there's a need for welfare reform, okay, because I just think it's unsustainable. And I also think that it's really important that people who can contribute should contribute. If they can work, they should work.
Angela Rayner's got a big list of tax we discover from Elite this week of taxes she wants to put on the relatively wealthy. If they ask your opinion, would you say, go on, have some courage, Rachel, put taxes up on the rich?
Look, what I recognise is that what we need is to grow the economy, right? I get that. And in order to do that, you need stability. So I actually left politics for a bit and worked in the private sector, specifically to kind of go, what do they need? Why do they think like that? Why do they invest? Why don't they invest? And the one thing I learned was that they want a stable economic and regulatory framework. So if you start messing about with it all the time, people are going to go, you know what, we're not going to invest in Britain, we're going to go somewhere else.
Forgive me, they might say, the First Minister of Wales is messing about with it. Rachel Reeves made a big statement. The first thing she did as Chancellor was to say, I'm going to do something tough. I'm going to do something my party doesn't like. I'm going to do something the country doesn't like. I'm going to cut winter fuel allowance. And what happens? The Labour Party says, oh, no, we can't put up with that.
Look, you've got to marry economics with politics.
What about raising taxes? You want stability, yes. You could raise taxes, couldn't you? That's surely a Red Welsh way would be to say.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually we have the power over certain taxes in Wales. So we about a third of income tax we can raise in Wales or decrease. the issue for us in Wales is that actually we have a very small proportion of people who pay the top rate of tax, like really tiny. Even the middle band is not massive. And what we can't do at the moment, at a time when there's a cost of living crisis, is raise taxes on the basic rate. I think that would be a step too far when the cost of living crisis is still real.
But if the rich of this city in London could pay a bit more tax and the Welsh people get a little bit more from government, you'd be fine with that, wouldn't you?
Well, that would be something I'd be a bit more relaxed about. But listen, I recognise they don't. That I recognise that there's an opportunity there, but that is a tough decision for the Chancellor.
One last one before we move on to more of your story, if you like. You mentioned immigration. Was your worry language around immigration? This big argument about whether the Prime Minister knowingly or unknowingly echoed Enoch Powell when he talked about us becoming strangers on our own island? Or is it that actually policy is going to be made in a way that will damage Wales?
Well, I think both, actually. I don't think I'd use that language, but...
Why not, just to be clear?
Well, I'm very keen on making sure that people feel comfortable in a cohesive community and that they feel welcome.
But when you're in Downing Street and the Prime Minister asks you how things are going, is that something you'll say? Look, I know why you said it.
Yeah.
You were trying to win over reform-minded voters. We've got that problem in Wales, but that's the wrong way to do it.
Look, I've got a list. I've got a list. He knows my list, OK? We're very clear on the list. But, you know, one of my top...
I've got a pen here and a bit of paper. Look, you just, if you could just write it down.
My list was in my speech, the Red Welsh Way. It was there. Yeah. You know, I want, for example, the fact is that over years and years and years, we've been shortchanged on things like rail. OK, so HS2, can you believe this, was registered as an England and Wales project, even though not 1 inch of rail was laid in Wales. And we haven't had any money. That's just fundamentally unfair. So that's my number one request. Just let's give us a bit of money for that.
Yeah. What was so fascinating about that speech, and indeed about your story, is that, as I suggested earlier, you're 100% Welsh, by which I mean not only born, brought up in love, but interestingly, and this was not that common when you were young, amongst certain parts of the population, a Welsh speaker too. And that's important to you, isn't it?
It is important to me, and it was actually quite unusual, because on the estate where I lived, we were the only family of 30,000 people who spoke Welsh.
Wow, the only one?
Yeah, it's the only family. So
and people then didn't always like that, did they?
And they didn't like it. And I went to a Welsh language school, and we went on a bus to school, and there were people who used to throw stones at the school bus when we were 6 years old, because they didn't want a Welsh language school in their community. So listen, that has been transformed today compared to when I went to school, and that's because of politics. It's because we've set a direction of travel. You know, we have about 600,000 people who speak Welsh today. We're on a mission to try and get 1 million speakers by 2050.
Because you see it as part of forging a Welsh identity?
Look, it's important to me. I'd like to think that it belongs to everyone. So even if you can say shwmai and diolch, that's enough to kind of get you started and make you feel comfortable and make you feel involved and included.
A good friend of yours, you mentioned him earlier, Neil Kinnock, said to us that you did the job, Eluned did the job entirely out of duty to Wales and the Labour Party. You weren't planning to be First Minister. You run for it in the past, but no one knew that your predecessor was going to go so quickly. You had to be dragged to it a bit, didn't you?
I hadn't planned it, no, but these opportunities present themselves, and when duty calls, when country calls, you have to answer that call. And
it was duty and country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it's, I'm really pleased I've done it, but definitely at the time I knew there were going to be major, major challenges ahead.
See, when Rishi Sunak was on Political Thinking, he talked, he, like you, had run before, but he'd lost, like you. And when Liz Truss went, it was clear that he really had doubts about doing it, but thought it was, to use your word, duty. And that's what you thought, did it? As the daughter of the man who was a dominant figure in Cardiff politics, in Glamorgan politics.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a degree of that. But I'm really pleased that I've done it, and now I'm absolutely driven in terms of doing the best for the country.
Eluned Morgan, First Minister of Wales, thank you very much for talking to me on Political Thinking.
Diolch yn fawr.
Hello there. Low pressure firmly in the driving seat now for the foreseeable future. Both Sunday and Monday will be quite unsettled with sunny spells and blustery showers, and some of these will be heavy and thundery in northern and western areas. Now we have low pressure anchored to the north of Scotland. That's where we'll see the heaviest of the rain, but there'll be lots of isobars on the charts for Sunday, so it will be a blustery day. Winds touching near gale force around some Irish sea coast. And there'll be quite a lot of showers around here, some heavy with hail and thunder for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern and western England and Wales. A better chance of staying drier will be across more central and eastern parts of England, where we'll see more sunshine. So perhaps up to 20 or 21 degrees here, otherwise the low to mid-teens further north. And through Sunday night, the showers continue. They fade across many central and eastern areas, but they'll continue to pile into northern and western areas. And we'll start to draw in some cooler, fresher air for the early part of Monday. So single figure values, I think, across the board. So for Bank Holiday Monday, it's a chillier start. There will be some early sunshine around. Blustery showers continue northern and western areas. And I think we'll see the clouds tending to build through the afternoon with longer spells of rain pushing in to northern and western areas. And certainly a cooler day to come, 11 to 16 or 17 degrees. The cool, showery, unsettled weather continues through the week, but there are hints that pressure may build across more southern areas. That should allow some drier, sunny and warmer weather to move in.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair, and we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg, tomorrow at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Donald Trump's second term has brought sweeping changes both at home and on the international stage.
They charge us, we charge them.
Join our teams for the latest developments and reaction. See the headlines as they happen with breaking news alerts on the News app. And get in-depth coverage on bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.